Coming up today on LinkedIn News Live, he's an Oscar-nominated filmmaker whose movies have broken barriers in Hollywood and beyond. Lee Daniels joins us to talk his latest film and the importance of telling the stories that matter. Plus, ESPN's Stephen A. Smith on why he's working hard to support. Hello, I'm Caroline Fairchild, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, where the business conversation.
Hey, Caroline. We're actually not live, so we're having some technical difficulties on the platform side. So just a heads up, we're going to troubleshoot and try to rerun the timer.
All right, I barely missed a beat, though. I just want to say that.
You look great. You did great. Perfect.
Right.
Thank you.
Great.
And thanks for your patience, Lee. Hang tight. We're just troubleshooting the platform.
This is your US Daily Rundown from LinkedIn News for Thursday, February 25th. WeWork co-founder and former CEO Adam Neumann will receive another $50 million as part of a settlement with SoftBank Group, reports the Wall Street Journal, citing anonymous sources. The sum will settle a bitter dispute he and other early investors in the shared office space provider have waged against the primary shareholder. Neumann exited with a $1 billion package in 2019, infuriating many of the thousands of WeWork employees who consequently lost their jobs after IPO plans were pulled last minute. Americans may have a third COVID-19 vaccine to go around this weekend after Food and Drug Administration staff endorsed Johnson & Johnson's one-shot product for emergency use. The agency is expected to vote Friday on authorization. The new vaccine can be stored in a refrigerator for months, further streamlining distribution. It performed best against severe cases of the virus in clinical trials, rather than moderate ones, but was more effective than others internationally, especially in South Africa. The SAT and other admissions tests are under pressure due to the pandemic and their alleged role in deepening racial and wealth disparities. On LinkedIn News, admissions officers and deans, among others, weigh in about the future of these standardized tests. About 10% of baby boomers who are seeking work said that ageism, including being told you're overqualified or you're too close to retirement, is the leading obstacle in their job hunts, according to LinkedIn's latest Workforce Confidence Index. The results were even higher in industries like media and communications, finance, software and IT, as well as retail. Boomer job seekers also cited struggling with not enough jobs available, lacking the right connections, too much competition, and lacking the right skills. Now for today's idea of the day. Having a seat at the table means nothing if your point of view is not valued nor heard by your team, says Ellen Kullman, President and CEO of Carbon. That was your daily rundown. Join the conversation on today's stories directly on LinkedIn.
Coming up today on LinkedIn News Live, he's an Oscar-nominated filmmaker whose movies have broken barriers in Hollywood and beyond. Lee Daniels joins us to talk his latest film and the importance of telling the stories that matter. Plus, ESPN's Stephen A. Smith on why he's working hard to support historically Black colleges and universities. All that next. Hello, I'm Caroline Fairchild, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, where the business conversation begins with you. It's February 25th, and here's a quick look at the top headlines trending right now on LinkedIn. Third vaccine gets FDA endorsement. McKinsey partners vote to replace firm's leader, and WeWork founder set to get millions. Let's take a deeper look into that story. WeWork co-founder and former CEO Adam Neumann will receive another $50 million as a part of a settlement with SoftBank Group, reports the Wall Street Journal. Neumann exited with a $1 billion package in 2019, infuriating many of the thousands of WeWork employees who consequently lost their jobs after IPO plans were pulled last minute. This conversation brought a ton of comments on the platform. We're going to bring you a few member comments right now. This first one's from Jennifer Farley, who said, I think we need to stop rewarding people who benefit off the backs of their workforce, destroy their companies, and defraud their business, associates, and partners. What he did was an enormous Ponzi scheme. He should be prosecuted, not rewarded. And to join conversations like this on the platform, be sure to check out the news module to the right of your LinkedIn feed. Or if you're in mobile, we can click into that search box. How do we bring more authentic Black historical figures to the big screen? It's a question that our next guest has spent his career not only asking, but answering for us all. Lee Daniels is an Academy Award nominated filmmaker and television creator known for works such as Monster Ball and Empire. His latest film, The United States versus Billie Holiday, chronicles the life of iconic jazz singer and the controversy surrounding her death. It premieres on Hulu tomorrow. I'm so excited to bring Lee Daniels on to LinkedIn News Live. Lee, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm great. It's so great to see you. I'm so excited to dive into this film. Lee, I've heard you say before that you actually didn't know the story, really, of Billie Holiday before bringing this film to life. So what drove you to start this project?
I've always been fascinated about Billie Holiday. I think that she is she just represents so much of Black culture. When you really listen to the voice, you hear the voices of all of our ancestors in her voice. And she always had an interesting sort of background to me. I didn't know it. You know, when you think of Billie Holiday, you think of a troubled jazz singer, someone that that was in and out of jail and addicted to drugs. But I did not know that she was she sort of kicked off the civil rights movement with this song Strange Fruit, and taking on the government really was something I didn't know, that it's not in our history books, and it doesn't tell it's not a part of Black history or American history. It's not a part of what we know to be of her story.
And so much of the work that you did with this film was reframing that narrative, bringing to life another side of her. I'm curious how you did that. What were some themes that you were trying to bring out? You just mentioned a few, but how did they get it so wrong to begin with? And these stories that we're hearing of her now are coming to light.
Well, the government suppressed these stories. The media suppressed these stories. Hoover didn't want anybody to know that he did not want that song Strange Fruit, which was about the lynchings of Black people in the 50s and the 30s and the 40s and so on. He didn't want that story. He didn't want that song out there because it would have caused what is now known to be the civil rights movement. People would have been in an uproar about it.
And this really gets to kind of the dangers of mostly white people shaping these narratives, shaping the narratives that we all tell each other. That was certainly true in the day of Billie Holiday. You could make the case that it is true today. What are the dangers in your mind of mostly white people shaping these narratives that we see on the big screen, that we see in the media?
It's their agenda. It's not actual, sometimes it's not fact. And it's just an example of how America was made. It's, this movie has made me reevaluate America as I know it to be, and my home. It's made me rethink history, and it saddens me. It saddens me. There's a lot of work we have to do. And I'm 61, and for me to rediscover this, or to discover this rather, for the first time in my life, it's very telling.
Well, speaking of some of that work that needs to be done, Lee, this is kind of a common tenor throughout your career, but you had to finance this film yourself because, as I read in the show script, this was, quote, a movie not for the studio system. For someone who's not in filmmaking, what does that mean, that the movie's not for the studio system? What is the studio system?
Well, they want stories that are that white people want to see, or that they think that that white people want to see. They don't really want our stories. They want our stories, but they want them whiteified, if there's such a word, whiteified, without seeming too
a word.
radical. So and this is a problem. I mean, all of the stories that I've told have never been, none of them have been financed by studios. They've all been financed independently. And studios have inevitably bought them because the culture wants to see them. They've never been reviewed right, I don't think, properly from a white person's lens. You know, white people don't see the world the way I see the world, unless they understand it from the studio perspective or from a journalist's perspective. Then it's not worth seeing. They forget that my cousins in West Philadelphia and in Baltimore, Maryland, want to see these types of subject matter, want to see us on screen.
And one of the things that I appreciate so much about you, particularly as an artist, is that you ensure that these stories don't get whiteified. In the case of Billie Holiday, you made Andra Day.
You used it, whiteified. Okay,
I
so that's going to be a new word.
We did
That's a new word. We
did it. Let's get it in Webster's dictionary.
Yep.
Webster's dictionary after this. All right. But you had Andra Day, who plays Billie Holiday. You had her take up drinking, smoking. You wanted to make sure that she authentically was living the life of Billie Holiday. Why was that important to you for this specific story?
Yeah, because we couldn't PG this story. This story was too important to tell. It's sort of scary because she was a smoker. She was a drinker. She was a kleptomaniac. She was queer. She was complicated. She was a complicated Black woman that was born in a brothel and was raped at 10, and then was made a prostitute when she was 12, and then used drugs to heal herself. So it's a complicated woman, and most women don't live that life. So Andra really, to understand her, she took up smoking, and God bless her, because I mean, really, it could have damaged her vocal cords and everything. But she really committed to this in a way that I'm so proud of. I haven't, I've worked with many actors over my career. I've never seen a transformation like this ever. It's a very powerful. Very powerful something that she did.
And for her debut film, it must have been even more powerful to watch that transformation. Lee, you're bringing Billie Holiday into millions of Americans' living rooms during just a year of reckoning across systemic racism, thinking about how racism shows up in all of our workplaces. I'm curious, when you think back to the time period of Billie Holiday and today, what's changed, but more importantly, what hasn't changed?
What's changed is that we are openly discussing on a global level the atrocities and the injustices that are happening daily, that we understand them, that we're not putting blinders to our eyes to what is happening in America, not just in the South, but across America. So that's changed. What's not changed is, we don't have slavery. Well, thank God. Men aren't getting lynched publicly, per se, but I mean, it's not changed. I mean, this is a conversation that is so painful to have that it speaks to the core of who I am as a Black man, and for me to even justify that question, I don't know, because it's open up, turn on the news,
right.
Turn on the news, open up a news, read it, go online. What's happening to us is bad, and right. That I have to really contemplate taking my son to Africa and my grandkids to Africa, so that they won't have to live in this place that I call home, that I thought was my home, because I'm afraid for them, is where I'm at right now.
Well, I want to bring up just a line from the film that really, really struck with me and stayed with me, which is when Billie Holiday tells her adversaries, "Your grandkids are going to be singing Strange Fruit," which is, of course, her reference to this song is going to live on despite the government trying to say, I can't sing this song. Are there moments from this movement right now that you hope won't be silenced, moments that will live on in terms of when we think about the history and the time period of 2020, 2021 that our grandchildren will be thinking about?
I think so. I think that we have to do the work. And I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. I don't think we're going to be able to deal with I don't think that it'll be resolved like that. the problem of systemic racism. I don't think it's going to happen in my children's lifetime. Maybe in my grandkids' lifetime, if we are doing the work, maybe we will be able to heal as Americans.
Lee, I want to turn to you in your career. We are speaking right now on LinkedIn. To say that you came to Hollywood from an unconventional background would be the understatement of the on LinkedIn Live.
That's for sure.
You had a career in healthcare. You showed up to Hollywood with $7 in your pocket. You somehow made it onto a studio set and you sold that company. How and then what kept you going? There's so many doors that were probably closed in your way even before you stepped on your first studio. What brought you to where you are today?
Well, first, I don't know whether it was $7 or $70. I'm not quite sure what that was. It's been so long that I can't even remember. It's been damn near 30, 40 years. Just the idea of being told no. I was told no so often that it became fun to defy the system. And like Billie Holiday, I had nothing to lose. Going back home was never an option. So I just pressed ahead and only took yeses until I got what I wanted. And I think that is that's important. I think not taking no for an answer has always been what's led me to my rewards. I've been very blessed, and I'm very spiritual, and I don't take no for an answer. I didn't know that if I had known what I know now, I probably wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be. If you're going to judge me because I'm gay, if you're going to judge me because I'm black, I probably would have headed home. But I didn't. I believed in mankind, and I think that's why I'm here today.
Well, Lee, I see a lot of members who are fans of you in this stream. I'm going to say hello to a few of them. We have Cindy and Andrea from Florida, Regina from Illinois, and Brianna from Texas. Thanks for joining us. We're here with Lee Daniels discussing his latest film, The United States versus Billie Holiday. Premieres on Hulu tomorrow, right, Lee?
Yeah. Oh gosh, we were supposed to do the film. Well, we shot the film on film, and for it to be in cinemas. So this is a very bittersweet moment for me because I didn't anticipate the movie to be streamed. Well, let's
talk about that a little bit, Lee, because we've covered the switch, the impetus switch to streaming from a business perspective here on LinkedIn News Live. But here we have an actual artist whose work is
very painful. It's very, very painful. I mean, look, we were at Paramount. We were scheduled for a release, and the pandemic hit. And we were just sort of closing our eyes and waiting for it to be open and waiting for theaters to be open. And I haven't even tested the movie. Part of the filmmaking process is sitting inside of a theater with people. The movie experience is a collective experience, watching people's reactions. So as I'm watching the movie, I know what works, what doesn't work, what isn't, what people are excited about just from the collective experience in a theater. Well, I've not been able to do that. And so I hope it's good. We tested it on a laptop with about 100 people watching the film, and little tiny boxes all over the computer screen, and people were picking their noses and smoking cigarettes and eating pizza and going to the bathroom and just like fall. And I was like, no, I closed my laptop up. I'm never going to do that again. So I haven't really tested. I haven't tested the film. It's been a hard journey trying to figure out what this new world is like and when theaters are going to be open. It is very painful as a filmmaker to spend $400,000 on film and then to see it wasted.
Well, Lee, I speak for myself, and I'm sure lots of people who are joining us in the stream, that if anyone can get people's attention, it's Andra Day. So even if it's on a laptop screen or an iPad or whatever device they're streaming on, I think you're going to be okay. The story is amazing. I want to go to something that you told Vanity Fair in 2017. You said, a dream always has to start somewhere, and it's what you do with it that makes the difference. We're going through a global pandemic right now. A lot of dreams have been squashed by a lot of people who are joining us right now in the stream. What did you mean by that? What you do with it makes the difference.
Yeah. I dare to dream in my life. So many of my friends that I grew up with in Philadelphia are not around today. Many of them are incarcerated. Many are dead. During the AIDS epidemic, during my 20s, I lost every friend that I had. And it's hard to dream. It's hard to not just dream, but to see your dreams come to fruition. And you have to stay laser focused on that. It is so easy to get sidetracked by the BS that's around you, falling into the negativity. But I dare to dream. Even now, I'm not too old to dream about what it is that I want to do.
Well, Lee, I'm seeing a lot of members in the stream right now who are appreciative of your dream and inspired by your work. Jason says, Lee Daniels, I applaud you, my brother. We have comments from George from Texas, Carrie from Georgia, and Stephanie from Ohio. Thanks for joining us on LinkedIn News Live. Let's talk a little bit about that, Lee. On top of your work of elevating the voices of Black figures on the big screen, you've also done a lot of work in your personal life to celebrate the rights of gay people. In terms of how LGBTQ characters are portrayed on the big screen, have you seen movement throughout your life? Are we moving in a positive direction there?
Not enough, no. I'm developing a television show for, they want to know what my ideal procedural is like. What is a Lee Daniels procedural? So I have a gender fluid Black, I had Miss Lawrence, who was in my TV show Star, and also in Billie Holiday as Miss Freddie. I'm creating a procedural for her that will, he's off to, what does the cops look like now? What do cop shows look like right now? So, it is that partnered with a Trump voting white woman who are off to the races to solve murders. So to me, it's moving the conversation forward. Also, it's not just about what I'm doing for LGBTQ in front of the screen. It is also behind the screen. Oftentimes, we think we're doing so much for people of color and Black people and LGBTQ just because you see us on screen. But you have to understand that, it has to be written. It has to be directed. You have to know to put hot sauce on the fried chicken. Otherwise, it ain't fried chicken. So you have to represent us. We have to be represented behind the camera also.
Well, Lee, I'm glad you brought up what you just called that procedural, because you've been known throughout your career sometimes to be difficult to work with because of these procedurals that you put in place, whether that's trying to bring more Black producers to set or bringing on a Black director to direct a specific episode of Empire. How do we change that narrative in Hollywood that you're difficult to work with because you are trying to change the scene?
Yeah. And you begin to believe it too. You believe that you are difficult because that you're just fighting for change, and you have to fight with yourself to know that you're doing the right thing. That there's nothing wrong about having a Black director, direct an episode of Empire. There's nothing wrong with having Black writers and showrunners. Thank God for Empire. I think that the conversation changed a lot. There wouldn't be a Black Panther unless there was an Empire, because I think the world understood that people tuned in on a massive level to the Black experience. But I'm so busy working on whether Cookie's hat is cocked on right that I don't pay attention to, how it's affecting the world. Or, I'm so focused on making sure that there's a Black gay writer writing for this character of Jamal who's kissing this Black guy, that I'm not focused on that it's affecting the world. So yeah, I don't know whether that answered that question, but yeah.
You certainly answered it. Lee, I'm so inspired by your career. Before I let you go, in describing the United States versus Billie Holiday, you said the film is what happens when we all get together and tell a story, a Black story. I'm talking to you right now during Black History Month. Mm-hmm. What other stories need to be told?
Oh my goodness, so many. I'm really excited about a mini series about Bayard Rustin, who doesn't get enough credit, who helped King with the civil rights movement and the March on Washington in a time when he put that all together. Before cell phones, he gathered the country together, but he was not embraced because he was gay. So he got a lot of flack from the NAACP. Sometimes we turn against our own, and I think we gotta support our own. We gotta support our own. How do we expect to get support from others if we don't support our own? So, yeah, I'm excited about telling stories. I'm going to continue telling stories that give voice to the voiceless and give a face to people we don't ordinarily want to see, like Precious. So I'm excited to just to continue on telling stories that I think change the culture, help the culture.
I'm excited to continue to watch those stories. Lee, thank you so much for joining us on LinkedIn News Live, for inventing a new word together live on the show, and all the work you continue to do both in front of and behind the screen.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you. All right, that was Lee Daniels. We're right now going to bring you a conversation with Stephen A. Smith. He's an ESPN commentator as well as journalist. Stephen embraced his new title as ambassador for historically Black colleges and universities, using his notoriety to educate the public on the importance of attending HBCUs and pushing for more funding for them. My colleague Joe Millard hosts this conversation now for our series, Conversations for Change.
You could have been using your airwaves at ESPN to be focusing on any aspect of Black History Month, but you specifically chose to focus on highlighting HBCUs. Why that specific focus?
Well, being a graduate of an HBCU, Winston-Salem State University, class of 1992, it's just HBCUs are something that's been near and dear to my heart for pretty much all my adult life. I wouldn't be where I am today if it were not for that. My experiences at Winston-Salem State University, playing basketball for the legendary Clarence Big House Gaines, God rest his soul. Some of the things that he imparted upon me, and some of the things that he did for me throughout the years, my years there. All he ever asked for in return was for me never to forget HBCUs and the contributions that would be needed from me and anyone else that could help elevate not just the imagery of HBCUs, the cachets of HBCUs and what have you, but just really, really highlighting what it did for me and what it could do for so many people throughout the United States of America. Obviously, being when you're associated with an HBCU, you recognize the challenges that they face financially and otherwise, in terms of getting the recognition that it deserves, the financial backing that it deserves, the facilities, so on and so forth. And so anytime you get an opportunity to do something for an HBCU, it stands that it'll probably benefit them exponentially. And those are the kind of things that I've always cared about. So the opportunity to be an employee at ESPN, to have been blessed and fortunate enough to achieve the success that I've achieved at ESPN, just being in the position that I'm in, knowing how receptive they were to helping HBCUs as well. It's something that I just could not, I couldn't turn down or bypass the opportunity to go forward and to do all that I could to help HBCUs. And that's really what this is about.
I wanted to stick to that word recognition, because you've said in the past that there's a lot about HBCUs that people don't know about, and you want to do everything in your power to enlighten them. What are some things that people who are unfamiliar with these institutions might not understand from afar?
Well, I think that, when you are an African-American in the United States of America, obviously, and you attend an HBCU, the family kind of atmosphere, dealing with people who come across as those that genuinely care about your success, genuinely care about preventing you from experiencing some of the things that would lead you into an abyss that ultimately may be waiting for you. People that serve not only a role as mentors, but cheerleaders as well, because I'm one of those people that I constantly elocute the fact that you need both. You need mentors and you need cheerleaders. And far more often than not, on too many occasions as Black individuals, we find ourselves being a bit reticent or apprehensive as to whether or not that's the kind of help that we'll receive from people who look a bit differently than us, who come from different cultural backgrounds than we come from, who don't share our identity, don't share our experiences, and don't necessarily relate to the trials and tribulations that we're ultimately going to endure in our lifetimes. But when you go to an HBCU, you don't feel like you're alone on an island. You feel like you're surrounded by an abundance of individuals who come from similar backgrounds, who can identify with everything that you can identify with: your challenges, your ups and downs, your family issues, your personal issues, aspiring professional issues that you ultimately may encounter, things of that nature. And when you walk onto a campus and you see people who look like you, who share your same pigmentation and hue, your same cultural background and what have you, you sort of feel at home. You don't feel alone. And so it's easier for you to be receptive to that cheerleader, that mentor that's in your face, trying to guide you, trying to push you, trying to motivate you. And so I think that that's an experience that you can't get at a predominantly white institution if you're an African American. That's not to say that you can't benefit from going to a predominantly white institution, because that would be foolhardy and it would be irresponsible for me to say. But there's a lot to be said about the positive impacts that an HBCU can bring to your life if you are an African American. And that's what I try to articulate to the masses.
Earlier this week, you asked HBCU graduates on LinkedIn to share with you what they cherish most about their college experience. And I want to highlight one specific comment in particular that you got from Dr. Flora Anders, who's an alum of Central State University in Ohio. And she said, "Our professors and administrators understood and shared in our struggle, so we had not only their blessings, but their understanding and support when a crisis hit the family of a student." How do you contrast this sense of community to what these same graduates experience when they go into the workforce?
First of all, you have to understand something about corporate America. Corporate America doesn't give a damn about you. No matter what they say, they give a damn about what they can get from you. They give a damn about how you can benefit them. But the second you're deemed a liability as opposed to an asset, it's over. And that's really what this comes down to. That's not what you experience when you go to an HBCU, because when you walk onto an HBCU, again, particularly as an African American, what you're walking into is an environment that wants to uplift you, wants to insulate you from some of the things that may ultimately serve as roadblocks to what you're aiming for. And when you're in that kind of environment, it's relatively protective. It's definitely uplifting and educational, but it's not devoid of accountability and responsibility, because they let you know, you have a responsibility to maximize your potential to the best of your ability, to go all out, to be the best that you can be, to ascend, not be stagnant, not plummet, but to actually ascend, because it's not just about you. It's about the shining example that you can ultimately set for others, so they'll be enticed and provoked and motivated to potentially follow. That's what it's all about, because we can't survive without each other. That's the mentality that you're encouraged to have, because it contributes to the very survival of historically Black colleges and universities throughout this nation. And in corporate America, none of that is relevant to them. You've got a piece of paper that says you have a degree, and to them, a degree means you can read, you can write, you can comprehend. You're trainable, but that's all it means to them. That's what you have to recognize about dealing with corporate America. That is the dichotomy that exists between that and an institution of higher learning, which in this case we're talking about would be particularly HBCUs. It's an environment that embraces you. Corporate America don't give a damn about that. They give a damn about what you can do to serve them, which is why once I got into corporate America, and once I heightened my level of intellect as it pertained to what they wanted from me, the one thing that I said to them, that I tell people repeatedly, that I've learned from corporate America, I wake up every morning with two thoughts in my mind before anything else. How can I make my bosses more money? And how can I get some of it? Period. People say, well, why do you have that attitude? It's very, very simple. Because if my number one objective is to make you more money, what boss is not going to be receptive to listening to me? And so that's the language that they understand. That's the language that they want their employees to embrace. That's the language that corporate America tells you they want without telling you specifically that's what they want. And you got to recognize that and move forward. But that's entirely different than the institutions of higher learning, particularly at HBCUs. They're looking to give as much as they get. corporate America ain't about giving as much as they can get. They're about taking as much as they can. If they have to give a little to get a lot, they will. But if they can get away with giving even less to get a lot, they do it. No compassion whatsoever. You got to know that.
And lastly, this conversation is part of a series of conversations for change that we're having on LinkedIn, highlighting the experiences of Black professionals. And I want to get to something that you've talked about in recent years, which is Black coaches being overlooked in sports. And when you talk about these issues, you make it a point to specifically not knock the white candidates that get hired over them, but to critique the process that leads to Black candidates getting overlooked. I think it's an interesting one that can apply to any industry. So can you explain your specific critique of the process when it comes to Black candidates getting overlooked?
We live in the United States of America. This has been described by many as being a gorgeous mosaic. For Black folks, that has not been the case. And to me, it's real easy for someone to escape the reality of a situation and to evade it when you're highlighting individuals. But when you talk about the process, now we're getting into a deeper discussion, because what you're talking about is something systemic. And when we think about what has plagued the African-American community throughout centuries, we're talking about things that were systemic. Racism, when you talk about slavery, that wasn't isolated. That was a systemic thing going on. When you talk about Jim Crow laws, that wasn't an individual. That was a systemic thing going on, exacted against Black people, people of color in the United States of America. And so when we fast forward to the year 2020, 2021, the fact that I still have to highlight and point those things out is unfortunate. Now, there are some people, many people I might imagine, who are incredibly turned off by it. They're upset about it. They're upset about my willingness to address and broach those subjects. Let me be very, very clear to your viewers and listeners here. I don't give a damn. I don't care. It does not matter to me, because if it's wrong, it's wrong. When Steve Nash became the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, I love Steve Nash. Steve Nash is one of the nicest guys that you could ever meet. And he's fought for a lot of Black people and on behalf of a lot of Black people, and deserves credit. So when I bring up the issue of white privilege, which I did when Steve Nash was named the head coach for the Brooklyn Nets, I was in no way trying to castigate Steve Nash in any way. I'm simply saying this man has never coached on any level, ever. High school, college, pros, no assistant coaching duties, no head coaching duties, anywhere. And the first job he gets is a championship contender led by Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. No Black man has ever gotten that opportunity. There have been Black men that have been hired that have been head coaches before that never coached. That is true, but they never inherited a championship contender. And that's what I'm talking about. There are separate rules for Black people, written and unwritten, but continuously exercised, even generationally. And do I feel an obligation to point that out when it slaps us in our damn face? Hell yes, I do. I always have, and I always will. And I don't give a damn what anybody has to say about it. That's how I feel. And my feelings are not going to change. And if folks that don't look like me, that don't share my cultural background, my pigmentation, my hue, if they have a problem with this, so be it. That's what comes with it. I can't sit in the chair that I sit in and let that fly through me and ignore the double standard, the flagrant double standard that continues to exist even in the year 2021. I won't stand for it.
That was ESPN's Stephen A. Smith in conversation with our very own Joseph Millard for our series, Conversations for Change. I'm Caroline Fairchild. Thanks so much, George, for joining us on LinkedIn News Live.